broadcast journalist and TV producer with around 25 years experience working mostly in TV and some work across radio and film. I wanted to put that to good use and be of service to everyone, in particular young people who want a career in media. As such, I'm doing a series of interviews with industry professionals across different age groups, different backgrounds, and across a wide variety of roles to share with you the different positions available and also to give you insights into the different pathways into this business. Watching the videos, I think you'll be very surprised to learn how some of my guests got involved in TV, radio, and film. I invite you to join me and my guests every week and get some inspiration for yourself from those who have done it already and have very, very successful careers. Now, talking about very successful careers, let me introduce my guest. He's an award-winning TV director. He's a media advisor and across production companies, communication houses, and governments. He's also a serial entrepreneur and a mentor, and just happens to be my mentor. Welcome, Tony Orsten.
Thanks, Samina. Thank you very much indeed for having me. Lovely to be here.
Lovely to have you here, Tony. Now, I have to say, you have a supremely impressive CV, but tell me, where did your story begin and how and why did you get involved in TV?
I've always been interested in communication, in telling stories, and I think storytelling is the key to everything about passion for the media. And I started when I was very young, making dramas on tape for my very, very long-suffering parents. And slowly it developed over the years to me thinking that really that the storytelling aspect is what it's about. Luckily, I knew, had a friend in TV, so I sat, thanks to him, in a gallery once in a television studio in London doing a drama. And I thought, ooh, who am I going to be? Which one of these people can I be? And I looked at the most noisy one, which was the director telling everybody what to do. And I thought, I'll have that. I'll do that. That's the one I want to do. And so sure enough, it was just suited me down to the ground. So I thought, maybe I can be part of a team that tells stories. And that's where it started, the sort of brainwave. And then I was relentless in my sort of pursuit, sadly, for everyone else, of getting into the media. And I started at a company called London Weekend Television, which is part of ITV, in the very early 70s, and became part of a team of people doing something completely sort of irrelevant at the moment, completely irrelevant on the one hand. But of course, what it did is it got me into the business, which meant when you have one foot in the door, you're able to really convince people that you might be useful to them. And that's where it started, really. And every year or every 6 months, there was something else I could
What's interesting about what you've said is, if you don't ask, you don't get. So clearly you asked if you could go and, sit in on in the gallery. And second, it seems to me that you had a vision from a young age as to what you wanted. Maybe not particularly the role, but what you wanted to do. Is it important for young people entering this business to have a plan?
I think, as you've just said, I think rather than necessarily a strict plan, maybe more of an inkling of what they want to try and achieve, because the excitement is always doing something. The doers are the people that are really interesting. And the ones that can do are the ones nowadays in the 21st century who are able to make television or films themselves, and that's a fantastic thing. So they can get a taste. I had to wait when I was there at that age because technology was really old, as opposed to fantastically new and sort of encompassing. It was very old-fashioned and difficult and expensive, so I couldn't do it myself. I had to wait until I got a job. Now it's really, because you can do everything yourself, you can teach yourself what it is that excites you about storytelling and get in there. And it's amazing because the current world that we live in now needs young storytellers. That voice is not yet properly heard, in my opinion, anywhere in the world. And it's still down to people like me. And that's not where it should be.
It's great what you've just said, but for what, I work with a lot of young people over my career and had interns and work experience and, a lot of young people. And a lot of them really don't have a clue as to what they want to do, but they want to get into the industry. There's other young people I speak of who are not you know, involved in the industry. They see it as super glamorous. You know, there's a lot of celebrities. It looks like it's going to be super cool and fun, which it is to a certain extent. What would you say to those people, like, who don't have an inkling, but they want to get in the industry?
Get an inkling. To be honest, it's quite simple. If you don't know, the number of people that have come up to me and said, you know, I'd like to get into the media industry. Well, you know, what do you suggest? And I say, what do you want to do? And they go, I don't know. And I go, well, that's very difficult, because the media industry, especially at the moment, is so varied. It goes all the way from, you know, making video games, which is genuinely storytelling as well, all the way through to making, you know, a full-length feature film. Everything in between, and a million different things. So there's a lot of choice, and I think you've got to try and work out what it is you want to do. And I've had so many interesting people come to talk to me and say, you know, I think my skills are in directing, but you know, I think I'm going to be a songwriter. And you know, that doesn't matter. I think in the world today, you can have multiple paths, and they can be in parallel. You don't have to think of one plan and go, I'm going to just do this. You can go down a multitude of different paths and follow them all at the same time. And I think that's part of the joy of where we are and what we can do in the 21st century. And I would recommend that. I would think a number of different things that you might want to do that might interest you and excite you, because ultimately it's the passion. It's what you want to do is what's really important. And, you know, if I was recruiting, which I'm not anymore, in case anyone's interested, you know, I'm looking for people with passion who want to do something and who will push me over in the corridor, so to speak, you know, proverbially, knock past me to get something done. And I want that in a person.
Well, yeah, I think passion is really appealing, and it drives individuals as well.
Yeah.
I just want to go back to your career a minute, and I've looked over your CV. Well, I've known you for years, so I know what your CV is inside out. But you made some incredible leaps early on in your career. You started off as a producer presenter on radio, and then about 3 or 4 years later, you were like TV director at TVAM, quite a different discipline from radio, although a lot of similarities. And then a couple of years later, managing director, no less, at Chrysalis. And then a couple of years later at Paramount Comedy, like head of Paramount Comedy UK. I mean, as I said before, supremely impressive. What kind of mindset did you adopt to secure such executive roles and success so early on in your career? And what can those watching today take away from your approach?
Well, it's, you know, it isn't just talent. I'd like to say that I've got something that other people haven't, but I don't really, from a talent perspective. But from a persuasion perspective and for a passion perspective, I think that is something that I do have, and I still think I do. To answer your first question, you know, how do you make those jumps? How did I make those jumps? Well, you get one of the things I noticed when I started is that people spent a long time in those days, a long time doing the same job, maybe 10, 15 years. And I couldn't really understand that. For me, change is a very human thing. So having change at all levels, either slight change or sort of catastrophic change, is a human thing. You adapt to it, you iterate from it, and you benefit. Ultimately, you benefit from it because you have to rethink things and think outside of your normal sort of line of motion. So for me, jumping from one discipline to another was part of what I had to do in my head. I felt, right, I sort of very arrogantly, I've sort of done this, I'm going to have to do something else. And then you go after that. And again, you know, it's not brain surgery. We're all in a soft industry where talent can be learned. You can understand how to tell stories in whichever discipline you're in. And it is a joy to get to a point where you can do multiple things. And so I can run why am I qualified to run a company, you could ask. And the answer is because I've done all the other things, most of the other things in television and film and radio particularly, you know, to get there. So I know all the pitfalls, and somebody can come to me and say, you can't do that. And I say, yes, you can. And you can also be smart enough, if you're lucky, to be able to think ahead, to plan forward, not just to fight fires, but to think about what you could do. And I was in the middle of the digital revolution when it went from analog to digital, when television went from a flat screen, a lean back experience, to very much a lean forward experience, and you're on your computer. And that was, to me, was fantastic. And I thought that was amazing to have your audience actually work with you. Whereas to a lot of people, it was terrifying. Because, like, hang on a minute, we make a film, we make people sit back and think about a film, and now people can actually take part in a video game and change the story as they go. Well, that's not storytelling. Well, yes, it is. So it's exciting. And nothing, it's unlike brain surgery. No one's going to die. Everyone's going to look at you and go, you're either incredible or an idiot. And the same people will probably change their mind 3 times in the next year. So do it. Just do it. Get it done. Go for it.
You said just earlier that it's an industry where people can learn and storytelling is vitally important. Do you think then it's necessary to get a media degree? And indeed, is it necessary to get a degree at all if you can learn on the job?
It's a very difficult question, Samina, and one that has, it's been in part of my sort of thinking for a long time, because if you look at it from 2 different ways, if I had the choice to go back again 30 odd years or 40 years where I started and thought about my personal journey, which started with a degree, but in engineering, was that useful? No, not at all, at all. But and then I've done various jobs where I've been surrounded by people who've had certain types of degree and they had certain level of education, and they provide a service to the creative community, but not the only one. And what worries me, and has worried me for many years, is the representation of people who come from all quarters, all aspects of life, from a diverse educational and social backgrounds, I think provide more depth to creative storytelling than if you just pluck from one pool of educated people. So the answer to the question is, it's a bit tricky to answer it directly. If you get a degree, you have got more education, you've had more experience in life, but is it better for you? I can't really say hand on heart, yes or no. Sorry.
It is a tricky question, and that's why I asked it, because I have a design degree, and as you well know, I started my career in TV in a random way, which I'll share some other time. But my degree really didn't come into any use. I learned on the job, so it really, I suppose it's different for each person. And talking about our industry, as you well know, it's highly, highly competitive. TV, radio, and film, highly competitive environments. Now, for those wanting to enter, or I've just entered into this industry, what advice would you give to keep up with the competition?
Well, the most interesting thing at the moment is because it is such a wide, so when I started, there were 3 television channels, right? So to get a television program of your own onto one of those channels was literally impossible. There were a small cabal of people who did it, and that was it. And if you were lucky, you could hold something, or you would do some makeup or move someone's hair if you were very lucky. That was about as close as you got to any of those television programs in the 70s and 80s. Now there's an infinite variety of output. You can go, any of the content can go anywhere at any time, and it's instant. So the joy of that, obviously, is that you have the tools to be able to create and be able to tell your story from where it comes from your heart, to the world on an almost instantaneous basis. So that means that being competitive you're not competitive necessarily at the same level as everybody else, because media and storytelling is very subjective. People either like your story, they don't like your story. They watch a film, they love it, and they watch a film and they don't like it. So it's less competitive than when you're working in a factory and can you make something quicker than the person next to you, because in the media world, they're not making the same thing as you. So the joy of working in the creative industries is that you are making something unique to you. And no matter what you do, and even if it's a bit weird and a bit odd, often is quite incredible and breaks a mold, and people look at it and go, wow, that's the way we should do it. So there is no wrong. You can't be too competitive. You can't be too resilient. You can't be too strong in the industry, because you have to tell your story, and other people aren't going to tell your story. You're the only one who can tell your story.
Yeah, indeed. And also, it's interesting you talk about, different kinds of stories, and some perhaps being a bit odd or bizarre, but it's all welcome, because the environment's opened up, especially, with the streamers, with the likes of Netflix and Amazon. That's really opened up the market for storytelling.
Well, let's take one quick example of that. There's as we all know now, there's the most streamed limited series on television ever, which is The Queen's Gambit. Who would have thought, if I was a commissioning editor at Netflix, someone comes to me and says, I'm going to make a film about chess, and you just go, ooh, that's interesting. And it's going to be about a girl playing chess, right? and it's going to cost 1.2, 1.4 million pounds an episode. Blimey, really? Okay, and we're going to film it all, in Berlin, which is where they did film it.
Yeah.
And if you take that a traditional, I'm sorry, that's the timer. Traditional, we have to stop in a moment. The traditional way of doing something is often not the right way of doing something. So the Netflix people took a huge leap and made an incredible series about chess, and look what happened.
And that's the great thing, they're willing to take a few more risks and hear stories from people from diverse backgrounds, which I just think is awesome, and it gives more opportunity to young people. I've known you a very, very long time, and one thing I do know about you, you're a huge advocate of, helping the next generation of creatives. Yeah. You're involved with Sharp Futures and Wild Seed Studios. Can you just briefly tell me what they offer and what kind of candidates do you look for?
Yeah, so let's start with Wild Seed. Wild Seed is a production company, ostensibly, that's set up in Bristol, which looks to new people who are new to the industry, who could tell a great story in a field. It could be animation, it could be written, could be film, could be TV, could be episodic, could be one-off, and try and see if Wild Seed can get them to the next level, which is in front of a commissioner, to have the content turned into something. And we set this up about 8 years ago with and raised money to be able to put not only money into this, but actually to help people and to nurture them and create a safe environment for them to learn. It's been incredibly successful, and most of all, it's been really amazing to see the new talent coming up. It's just one of a number of different things. The other one is Sharp Futures up in Manchester. And that is slightly different. We call that what's called POD, People on Demand, where we create a safe environment for people to get into television, and the first steps to get into film and television, in this case in Manchester, and it's called POD, People on Demand. Check it out, Sharp Futures.
So a social enterprise, in effect.
It's a social enterprise. The idea is that we take the money, if you like, to make all this work from production companies and broadcasters around the Manchester region, who want to get new young people into their business, but don't have the time or the effort or the inclination in a number of cases to risk putting young people in positions other than just runners. So what POD does, what Sharp Futures does, is get people up, train people up to a level where they can make a difference to a company, and then we sort of manage them, if you like.
And they come from a more diverse.
Yes, thank you for that. Yes, they do. We specifically try to be as diverse as possible, particularly from the socio-economic side of it, so that we get people from all walks of life, and they make a difference. And we have a show each year where the people who succeeded come and talk to us, and I've always cried every year. It's amazing.
Well, it's good you're moved. And I'll add the details of both Wild Seed and Sharp Futures with this video. Now, sadly, our time is running out. I mean, I could talk to you all day. It's so interesting talking to you. But tell me, to finish up, in a sentence or two, what's the best piece of advice you can give to any young person watching today who wants to get into TV, radio, or film?
No idea is a bad idea. Your thoughts and ideas are personal to you, and they're important to the world because it's you telling that story. Nobody has the right to say no to you. You have the right to push as hard as you possibly can to get what you want made. Don't ever give up, be resilient, and you will succeed.
Sound advice, as always, Tony. Tony Orsten, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise, my pleasure.
If there's a position that I haven't covered in my interviews, then please get in touch, leave me a message and give me details of what that role is, and I will endeavor to do my best to secure an interview with somebody in that role just for you. Also, if there's any specific questions you'd like me to ask any of my guests across any role, then again, get in touch, leave me a message. I'd be happy to pose those questions to my guests. If you're interested in watching all my interviews, then please feel free to follow me across my social media platforms and YouTube as I post regularly on there all the details of when and where you can watch all my interviews. All that's left for me to say is a huge thanks again to Tony Orsten, and of course a huge thanks to you for watching, and see you next time.